Okay guys, so today, if you missed class today, you missed taking some notes on metric conversions. So you should have a notebook set up like this. I may have already done this for you. If I didn't, all you gotta do is fill out your name, whatever period you have me for science, so first, second, third, fourth, fifth, or seventh, period science, and then make sure you include my name in there in case the notebook gets lost around the school somewhere. People know where to return it. Once you get the front cover taken care of, you've got a table of contents on the inside, so you're just going to write table of contents up there. And then you are going to flip 2 pages. These 2 pages are going to be where we'll fill out your table of contents. Okay, we might not need both of them, but we're going to give ourselves some room just in case. And then you're going to go through and number your pages. If you just number up to like 20 or something, that'll get you a good start on the year. So I only want the numbers up in this top corner right here. You don't need numbers on this opposite page at all, just right here. So this is page 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you get like up to 20, you should be perfectly fine. We're only going to take like 1 or 2 pages worth of notes today. So that was the notebook part of the day, or the notebook setup part of the day that you missed. When you're ready, we're going to go ahead and go back to page number 1. We're going to start on our metric conversions notes. So I'm going to do them on a separate sheet of paper because it'll show up better on the camera, but you should be writing everything that I'm going to write on just a plain white piece of paper. You should be writing in your notebook in a way that makes sense for you. All right? So I'm going to slide that over. And we're going to do some metric conversions, and this should be the title on the top of your notebook page. Metric conversions. So you guys already know some metric conversions. So if I were to show you a meter stick, and I can't fit the whole meter stick in here obviously, but if I were to show you this meter stick and say, okay, how many centimeters are in this meter? You would probably be able to tell me that there are 100 centimeters in this meter. If I were to show you just one of these centimeters, that was probably super out of focus. If I were to just show you one of these centimeters and ask how many millimeters are in that, you would probably be able to tell me that there are 10 millimeters in a centimeter. So those are some basic metric conversions that you already know. You already have those facts memorized, right? But we want to be able to convert any metric unit we are given to any metric unit that we need. So maybe I know that my house is 2.3 kilometers away from school, and I want to know how many meters that is. You might not be able to do that off the top of your head, but the tools that we're going to talk about today, the method we're going to talk about today, will help you to be able to do that. So the first thing you should do, you should take a little bit of space at the top of your notebook page, not real big, maybe like a hand width or so, and you're going to start off by drawing a diagonal line from top left to bottom right. All right, so this is the beginning of our little tool that will help us to figure out our metric conversions. On this line, you're going to put 7 tick marks. I always put 1 in the middle and then 3 on each side because you want them to be evenly spaced out. So doing it this way makes them nice and evenly spaced. Okay, now we need to label these tick marks. Now, at first you're going to be like, what the heck is she doing? You might recognize it, but you might be really confused. If you're confused, it's okay. We'll talk about it more in a minute. So I've got K, H, and these should mostly be lowercase letters. So this is a lowercase k, lowercase h. We've got a lowercase d, a. In the middle, I want to put an uppercase B. Then I'll do a lowercase d, c, and m. Okay. Some of you may recognize what's going on at this point. What these are the first letters of our metric prefixes. So we have kilo, hecto, deca. This one stands for our base unit, deci, centi, and milli. So let's go ahead and write those down. If you know from English, the word prefixes means before. So it's something that comes before. We can tack these kilo, hecto, deca. We can tack these onto the beginning of any of our base units to modify them to a slightly different unit. So it's like the difference between meter and centimeter, or millimeter, or kilometer, kilometer. Okay, so our prefixes from first to last. We've got kilo. I'm going to put a dash after each one to signify that we could fill it in with any base. So we've got kilo, hecto, deca, D-E-C-A. Then we've got our base units. Let's pause real quick to talk about what our base units might be. If we're talking about length, our base unit is going to be meter. And below that, I'm going to put a little lowercase m because that's what we use to abbreviate meter. Okay, if we're talking about mass, we're going to use grams with a lowercase g as our unit for that, our abbreviation. And finally, we have liters, and this is the one that we do as a capital letter, because if we used a lowercase l, it might look like an I, or sorry, not an I, the number 1, and that might get confusing. So here's our base units, and I'm actually going to take a second. If you have a highlighter or any different colored whatever, or it doesn't have to be a different color, I'm just going to use a different one. I'm going to put this in a box because we are going to be using this and referencing it a lot. So I want to highlight that that's an important piece of information there. All right, so coming back, we've got our kilo, hecto, deca, and base. Now we need to move on to this D, which stands for deci. We've got centi, and finally milli, M-I-L-L-I. All right. So those are our prefixes. Now, you don't have to memorize this. You don't have to memorize the order of these letters, okay? I mean, you sort of do, but there's an easier way to do it than just memorizing letter after letter. The way I would suggest doing it is memorize this little story. It might sound familiar to some of you guys. It's a story about King Henry. King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk. I really hope I don't die by drinking chocolate milk someday, although it doesn't sound like a bad death. So this little story will help you remember the order that these things go in from left to right. Kilo, hecto, deca, base unit, deci, centi, milli. Right? Now, one thing that students will mess up sometimes or forget about how to which order it goes in is since we've got these two D's and this word doesn't have any A's and this word doesn't have any A's, students will forget which D has the little A on it. There's a couple of different ways that you might think about this. I think the best way is going to be A comes before B in the alphabet. If you put A after B on this D, that's just wrong, right? A always comes before B, right? You might also just remember that the A goes on the first one or whatever else. If you can remember these words, that's great. You'll know that deca has an A in it, okay? Deca comes before deci. Again, you could think alphabetical order. A comes before I in the alphabet. So anything that helps you remember that the A goes on that D, not on that one, is fine by me. Whatever works for you. Okay. The last thing that I want to talk about before, well, actually, we'll start doing, we're going to do an example, but the last thing that it would be ideal if it were still on the first page of your notes. If you don't have space, that's okay. You can go over to the second page of your notes. Is there's a series of steps that makes these easier. Now, as you get used to them in time, you might be able to do a couple of the steps at the same time. You don't have to walk through them quite so much. But when you're first getting started, having these steps is going to help you. So I'm going to slide this. I can probably slide it up to here. I'm going to start writing the steps down here. And on this other sheet of paper, I'm going to actually do a problem. All right, so, sorry, looking for something here. So the problem that we're going to do is one that you probably already know. And we're going to say I have 1 meter, and I want to know how many centimeters that's going to be. Now, this format is the format I'm going to give you most of your problems in. A number with a unit equals blank with a unit. All right, so you just got to figure out what goes in that blank. So we'll set that off to the side for a second. And our first step is going to be to rewrite our number. Rewrite number. And this time we want to, if it doesn't have a decimal in it already, like this doesn't have a decimal clearly put in the number, we want to rewrite it with a decimal. Okay, so basically we want to take, and I'm going to do this in a different color so that you can see what my work is and what the original work is. We're going to take this number 1 and we just want to rewrite it, and we want to think about where's the decimal in this number. Is it at the beginning of the number or is it at the end? The answer is that it comes after the number. So if you see a number without a decimal, at the very end of the number is going to be where the decimal point, the invisible decimal point is, right? Just like a period is at the end of a sentence, the decimal point always comes at the end of the number if it's not already there. If the decimal's already there, that's where it starts. All right, so that's step number 1. We rewrote the number with a decimal, okay? Step number 2 then is going to be to find your beginning and end. This is my symbol for and. It's just like a backwards 3 with a line through it. Beginning and end on the line. Okay? So we can use this one up here. And let's move this to here. So we want our beginning and end. So we need to find, this is 1 meter. Now this is something that students get wrong all the time. The first thing we need to do is figure out where we're beginning, which is here at this unit, meters. And we want to end at centimeters. Okay? So meters, a lot of times students will say, okay, I'm starting at meters, I'm going to start here. But that is wrong. Now it's understandable, it's confusing because this is an M and this is an M, but you have to remember what this M stands for. And this M stands for milli, stands for one of our prefixes. This M stands for meter. Meter is one of our base units. Okay, so we are starting at 1 meter. Meter is a base unit, so we are starting right here. And then we want to end at centimeter. Okay, so then we go to our C for centi. Found our start point, found our end point. That's step number 2. Find your beginning and end on the line. Okay. Step number 3. This is sort of worded funny. It's the best way that I've thought to word it, is find your hops. Now what I mean by that is we've found where we want to begin, and that's here at our base unit, and we found where we want to end. We need to figure out how many hops are between those. So that's 1, 2 hops, okay? And that's to the right, all right? So we found our hops, 2 hops to the right. Step number 4. Step number 3 is super easy. Step number 4 is going to be move the decimal in the number. Okay, so all we have to do is, again, think about over there. Again, we started at base, went to centi, we took 1, 2 hops to the right. So I also want to move my decimal 1, 2 hops to the right. My decimal is no longer there. My decimal is now there. Okay, now steps 4 and 5 kind of come together. Your answer shouldn't just end up being 1 with a bunch of space and then the decimal. Those spaces need to be held by something. You guys probably know by now we usually use zeros as placeholders. Okay, so fill in however many spaces you need. Any of these little loops or upside down arches that don't have a number there, we need to fill those in with zeros. Okay, so that was step number 4. Finally, step number 5 is our last step. Is simply to rewrite answer. And we're going to say that we want to fill in zeros if needed. All right, so final step is super easy. We've got our 100 decimal, 100. You could put the decimal here, but 100 is really just our final answer there. And you guys already knew that. 1 meter has 100 centimeters, right? You already knew that. But I just used this tool to show that we can find that in a way other than just memorizing the facts. Okay, so make sure all of this is in your notebook. But I'm going to do a second video that'll give a couple more practice problems with this. So go ahead and make sure this is in your notebook. Watch that other video to get a few more practice problems, and you should be all set.